Hi, everybody, and welcome to our show. This is From This Corner TV, and I'm Marilyn Dayton, your host and producer. Very interesting show tonight, so hang in there with us because we have more than just, and we're going to be entertaining, guaranteed. But it's going to be very interesting and information that you really need to know because a lot of you are in the over 40s. And if you're not, you either married to somebody or your parents are over 40. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about harnessing the combined power of women over, and men too, we can't leave you out, as they age over 40, transform and reinvent themselves. Our guest and I have reinvented ourselves many times. Our guest is Karen Sands, and she does all of this in a variety of ways. She does everything. She's a coacher, she does consulting, speaking, authoring 11 books, and blogging. She is a leading Gerofuturist, and we're going to talk about that word in a minute, and thought leader on the longevity economy. She's a bold advocate for the new story of our age, a visionary with wrinkles. I love that. An expert authority on midlife and beyond, women and the future, the business of aging. And she's a high-impact certified master and mentor coach and consultant trainer who empowers boomers to rock their age. Love it! And inspires those who serve them to shape the world and their role in it. And her latest books are, Firecracker. Wait a minute here. You're a firecracker speaker. I just noticed that. And that is true. And a trailblazer. So anyway, Visionaries Have Wrinkles is the name of her book, one of them. Gray is the New Green, which is about the financial aspect of it. And The New Ageless Way, which just came yesterday in my mailbox. And I can't wait to read it. So, welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here with you. I'm thrilled. Thank you.
Well, so am I, because I've been waiting to get you on the show for a little while. We had to reschedule. But
hello, everybody.
Yes, indeed. So let's start with the first question here. We're talking about a Gerofuturist. What exactly is that? It's a unique word.
It is a unique word, and it's because my role is unique. It really started way back in my early career, where I became a futurist by chance. I didn't expect it. I ended up in financial services after having been an educator and a serial entrepreneur, as many of you may have, many careers along the way. But becoming a futurist, and a futurist is not someone that reads tea leaves or a crystal ball, but we are people who study trends and create alternative scenarios or stories or narratives about what the future might be in different situations. And at that time I was doing it in the business world, but I was doing it in financial services, where I ended up, obviously part of my life story arc, but I ended up in retirement services. And I had to study, because I was new to this world, having been an entrepreneur in a whole another world, but I had to understand, who are we serving? Why are we serving? What would it look like in the future? Well, lo and behold, by the end of my tour of duty there, which was about 10 years in corporate, I was an established futurist and a strategist as well. So that was the futures part, right? But here I was studying about the graying of the globe and the graying of America before anybody was really talking about it back then, because this was back in the late 70s and 80s, all of the 80s actually. And, but it was later, after I left corporate America, that I finally made a big leap into the study of adult development and aging. But I want to share the story in between here, how this kind of happened, or where it started, really. When I was 28, my mom at that time was 59. I was home with one of those long, young people on the show won't know what I'm talking about, but the rest of you will. These long, wiggly cords of a phone.
Oh, yes.
Right? Well, I was washing the dishes, and my kids were in the other room watching probably Sesame Street, which some of you will remember. And the phone rang. And I realized it was my mom. Now, obviously, we didn't have, a call-in a screen that
Caller
told us it
ID
was,
or anything,
yeah,
yeah.
caller ID. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you. But I picked it up and I said, "Hi. Oh, hi, Mom." And something was not quite right. And I said, Mom, what's up? And what she said to me on the phone, I'm not sure which camera to look at, but what she said to me on the phone was, I have to tell you something. And I said, okay, what, Mom? Meanwhile, the TV's blaring, the water's running, right? And she said, I just drove into a toll booth head on. In that moment of being 28, my whole life switched. My whole life turned around. In that moment of time, which I'll never, ever forget, obviously, I knew that I didn't want to end up like her. I didn't want to end up at 59 without a life. She hadn't yet been out in the world fully. She had been a great mom, but she hadn't yet realized herself, certainly. And in that moment, I knew that forever on, if my life was going to be shortened by what was for her then very, very early onset Alzheimer's, that if that was my destiny, if that was in my DNA and I would realize that, I needed to not stop now. Let nothing ever stop my voice and my give back to the world. And so that changed my entire trajectory. I left a marriage of 14 years, a gruesome divorce, which is a whole nother story for another time about renewal and being a woman and what that means. And I moved on. Later on, that story stayed with me so much that when I left corporate, I went into getting a postmaster's degree in gerontology, in adult development and aging. So by the time I kept moving up, I felt like there's an old myth called Sisyphus, the guy that pushes up the hill with the rock, with the boulder, and then he rolls down. He pushes all the way to the top and rolls down. So for a long time, I felt that way because I was pushing this new understanding and the seeking I had about what does it mean to be an older woman? What does it mean to be older anybody? But especially what does it mean to be an older woman? And who are we when we're no longer young, right?
Yes.
And so that story kept pushing and pushing me through, which we can get back to other subsets of that. But because of that, I always felt bifurcated. I was this futurist and businesswoman, I was this gerontologist, and I was this coach. How does it all come together? And bingo, it came to me that really what my destiny path has been was to bring that together. To bring the study of boomer foresight, as I call it, right? And business, and soul work, and the future, and women's path together. And so that became Gerofuturing, the combination of the two. And I believe it is the future for many people in terms of a new career. So I would really encourage people to move in this direction, and I can clearly show them how. So that's how Gerofuturist came in. And what's interesting with all the different monikers I tried over the years, that one everybody gets. If they don't get what it means, they get that they need to ask what it means. And then that opens up a whole nother volume of material.
It does. Now, when your mother drove into the toll booth,
Yes.
and she said she was told to do it.
Oh, I'm
correct?
sorry, I left that out. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I left that message out. That was the real rocker. What she said to me when I, in my youth, I said, and shock, I said, oh, why did you do that?
Yeah.
And the answer she gave me, because the voices on the radio told me to.
Now, was this the first sign of any kind of symptoms?
This was the first significant sign. First significant sign. Thereafter, there were calls where she would call me by an elder sister of hers who had long passed on. That kind of thing would start to happen. But that was dramatic. That left no room for questioning that she was gone.
And so that was a life-changing force for you.
Changed my trajectory totally.
And you've been
and my perspective.
And you've been on this journey ever since then.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you've written 11 books.
Yes.
I mean, I'm having a tough time writing my own one book.
Well, you know, because I felt compelled. I've written, as I said, as you said, 11 books, but this one was the one I wrote in 2012. And just so you can all see it, I don't know if you can see it well,
There
but
it
it's
is.
Visionaries Have Wrinkles. And it's I know you're going to ask me this question later, but it came up now, so I'm going to bring it up.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, this came out of my postdoctorate program because I knew that the program, I almost quit actually, because it was based on what most gerontology and adult development programs are, which is the disease model of aging. And so is geriatrics, which is really the study of the well-being, if you would, physical well-being and medical issues of people who are elderly. And I'm saying elderly as in elderly. You know, 80 and above typically is geriatrics. But the gerontology part, which is the study of really adult development and aging, was still a disease model. And I couldn't handle it. I just said, this doesn't work for me. This isn't what I came here for. And I remember having this discussion with my advisor and department head, who was now a very big name in the field. And he said, "You want to leave the program?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. This isn't the model I see aging to be." And he said, "Okay, would you teach a course on conscious aging?" Which is how I labeled conscious aging. And I said, "I would love to teach a course on conscious aging." So I did, Conscious Aging 101. It was the very first course in the country, maybe the globe, but certainly in the country. And it was for professionals in the field, because I wanted to change the model that was being used. So out of that, I then started interviewing, and I interviewed women over the age of 60, they could not be younger, on what it is to be an older person, an older woman. What does it mean? What's our role? Who are we? And so I had over 100 people. And I did focus groups, et cetera, because at that time I was working with a lot of professionals and executives in the coaching realm. And so I used them really for focus groups. And what I found out is they could care less.
Oh, boy.
This was, you know, back in the late 80s, early 90s. And, you know, I was only 40 or around there at that time. They could care. I mean, they were 20s and 30s and 40s and some 50s, but it was just not of interest. So I took all of that research and I put it aside and said, it's too soon, too soon. Well, it took a whole lot of things happened in between. But I was in Arizona a couple of years ago. I guess it was about 2009, 10, something like that. And I was at this workshop for experienced speakers to become even great speakers, to be visionary speakers, basically. And we had to come up with a topic, something that really moved us, that we hadn't been speaking out in the big world about, but was very, very close to the bone for us. So when I was asked, it was, oh, I'm going to talk about what does it mean to be an older woman? What does it mean to be a visionary? What does it mean to be a visionary with wrinkles? Well, I got up to do my speak in front of these, 30 or so top-notch speakers, and I had no idea how this was going to go. This is the first time I was speaking it really fully out loud. Well, shorten this, dead silence at the end, and I thought, oh, God, I must have blown this one. And then all of a sudden, tears and clapping, and I went, oh, my God, it's time.
How about that?
It's time. So I went back, and that's what came out of this, right? And this is a book of interviews that are more about, I wanted people who read this to feel like they were a fly on the wall. So they were really with me to hear what these women had to say. And it is that kind of experience. But what's precious about the title and how I came up with this, because it does relate to another question you wanted to ask me, which was, what have I seen? What brought me on to, or kept me on the path?
Exactly, yeah.
So it's a wonderful story, and I'm forever grateful to this woman. She was one of my executive coaching clients, and she was 47, divorced, 2 little kids, and she was perfect. perfect in every way. She was the epitome of the, hotshot female executive woman. And she was in branding in one of the really boutique hot branding company. And she was the token woman. And she came to me, and in this session, she was complaining about a dream that she had the night before. And the dream was about her growing older. And she said, I don't want to grow old. It's too soon. Now remember, her age, she was 47.
Yeah.
I don't want to grow older. I can't let it, I won't get to do everything I want to do. And so it was perfect opening for us to talk about what does it mean when you're no longer young, but you're not very, very old.
Exactly.
So using a modality that I use with coaching clients, we moved her into a place to speak about, okay, so if we could speak to that visionary within you, and I do a lot of work with visionary leadership, if we could speak to that visionary within you, let's see what that visionary would say. So from this process, what the visionary said was, keep your eye on the vision, don't let anything get in your way, and keep on going. Well, this woman was in such shock to hear this coming out of her, right? So as we were discussing this, and she was kind of getting into this, oh, so maybe I could do this. And again, it's hard without knowing the process, but I moved her into another voice that was rumbling. It was like shaking the chair. You could feel the energy fill up the entire room. Big. And all of a sudden, out of her in this very deep voice, which threw her, and I was looking in total awe, right? This voice came out, you can't be a visionary, not with wrinkles. No way. Well, that was what was driving her, was that belief, which is in so many of us. It's so
yes.
ingrained.
Yeah.
It's so deeply in ourselves that you can't be a visionary, that you can't make a difference, that you can't rock the world after you're 40 or 50 or 60 or 70, or in our case, over 70. So recognizing that and enabling her to be able to see the difference, really empowering her, not enabling her, to be able to see where she was and what was driving her, which said, no, you can't do these things, versus the visionary within that said, oh, yes, you can, and let's go for it, was a major breakthrough and turnaround for her. And in fact, she has become a major, major visionary. So that phrase of you can't be a visionary with wrinkles is why this book became Visionaries Have Wrinkles.
And I love it because I'm proud of every wrinkle. I
me
earned
too.
every one of them.
Yay, me too.
And it comes with it. To me, it's empowering because
it's life lived.
yes, and when you're our age, we have so much wealth of knowledge and experience to share. People just don't realize that. It's becoming more and more prevalent that we do have an audience that is accepting of who we are and what we can offer now.
But first, it takes our owning who we are when we're no longer young. That's the first step, because ageism, which is so rampant, yes, definitely in the workplace and in the marketplace, but it's more so because it's rooted within us. So until we can unearth and transform that inner ageism, that self-ageism, it's going to be a while to shift it outside. So we have to start there. Yeah.
When people say, why do you tell people what your age is?
Oh.
Why shouldn't I?
Yeah.
Because I have lived. And I'm continuing on. Now, you have said that, that you understand that if you've reached the age of 60 and you're doing well, chances are you're going to live to 100, especially a woman. We do live longer.
Actually, of all of us living today, 1 out of 4 will live to the age of 90, which is a pretty high number. Right?
It is.
And some of us will actually live to 105. There was an article that came out this week that I have to delve back into, but the essence of it was in Nature magazine, which is, having been a scientist and a biologist way back when, I love that journal. So in Nature, though, what they have finally come to terms with is that we can live to 115 and be open to that. Certainly my grandchildren, maybe even my kids, maybe your kids will live to 115. But they feel now that the human body cannot live beyond 125. So there's some controversy or discussion on this. There are people in the futuring world that are sort of, how do I want to say it? They're on the edge of thinking that we could live forever, literally, and that's something they call singularity, which you can look up. It's a fascinating study and approach. But what the sciences are now telling us is that that's not so, that 125 will be the max. But 115 is actually
Achievable.
doable.
Yeah.
Yeah. May not be for you and I, but certainly for our kids it will be, definitely, and our grandkids.
And is that due to the progress in the health industry as far as keeping us healthier, treating disease, or is that holistic,
I think it's
natural?
everything. I think it's evolutionary, first of all. Right? I mean, this is so different from when people's old age was 40, right? Now,
Yeah.
40 is just the beginning of midlife, and that's going to keep shifting. You know, then it'll be 50, then it'll be 60 as we live longer and longer. But so it's all of those things. It's our being wiser about what we eat, how we exercise, how we de-stress. I mean, all those things help our bodies to do better. And medicine and science and natural medicine is just giving us so much opportunity now to live longer and live healthier. So it's all of those things. Yeah, definitely. But it's also just evolution. Yeah, it's just a meant to be.
Now, I read recently, within the last year, an article in Reader's Digest magazine, which it relaxes me, and it's got.
And it's digestible.
It's digestible, definitely. There was an article about an island in Spain where they called it the island where people forget to die. And they generally live to over 100. And there's hardly any stress. They take walks. There's a hill, a very big hill on the island, and they walk around and walk up that. They grow their own food. There's hardly any chemicals.
So it's farm to table.
Yes.
Yep.
So, and everybody's friendly, and it's like one big family. And all of those positive things that are on this island enables them to live longer. There was a man who lived in this country, and he was told he was going to die of cancer. So they told him to get his life in order.
Right.
Well, he moved to that island, and he lived to be, and this, I think he was like 70 maybe when this happened. He lived to be over 100. His disease went away.
Right, right.
And to me, the possibilities are endless. We just need to be aware. And I don't remember people exercising much at all when I was a kid.
Neither.
You know? I mean, I walked to school back and forth every day, and it was over
Or
a mile.
bike ride,
yes.
right? Yeah, we did all of that, but it was...
Exactly. There were no school buses back then.
Exactly.
And so that was my exercise, you know, other than playing and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But to me, I would love to be around, you know. I keep telling my grandkids, you know, I'm going to watch you live your life, and and they go, sure, Grammy. Yeah, I know. Okay, well,
you're a Grammy too.
Yeah,
I'm a Grammy too.
I love that Grammy. It's soft, you know, it fits perfectly.
Yep.
But yeah, I plan to be around, and as long as, you know, my body holds together and the brain holds together.
Well, to me,
you know.
that is part of how we will do that. You and I are both so actively engaged with life and the future possibilities and the promise of the future, so that it really doesn't matter how many more years, as long as each of those years is filled with that perspective, that will enable us to keep going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And positive.
I feel more compelled now I've always been compelled. That's not really true. So I've always been compelled. But there's something about now knowing that I'm closer to the end than I am to the beginning. So being closer to the end than the beginning, I've got a lot I want to get done. And so that's that compelling that I know, there's a lot of talk now about legacy, but it's very age appropriate because we are leaving a legacy. So whether you're 40 or 50 or 60 or 80 or 90 or whatever, these are the years to leave that. And something I feel so strongly about is that most of us don't realize that we have an inner visionary within us. But we also don't realize that each of us has our own DNA stamp of our own unique greatness. I don't know where the camera is I'm supposed to look into, but I want you all to hear this. Each of us has untapped greatness that we need to leverage. And if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, doesn't matter. This is the time to do it. There's the old Pareto principle, which was 80-20. Many of you have probably heard of the 80-20 law, right? Or rule. But in fact, I studied with very many greats in my life. I've been very, very blessed that way. And one of them was Dr. Demings, who was the continuous quality improvement guru. He turned Japan around and tried to turn America around as well. But I met him at a wonderful, wonderful time in life. He was really into transformation at that point, and transformation from leadership as well. And one of the things he did is he turned around the Pareto principle and said it's not 80-20, it's 95-5. And for me, that's how I see later life, whether it's midlife or later life, is that in that last 5% of whatever your life is going to be in terms of your own longevity, that's when you've got to be sure you get to the 95%, that you do everything that you came here to do in that timing, if you haven't done it already. So it makes these years so exciting.
Oh, yes.
That we have this to do, to give back and to share and bring about, is just a wonderful thing. And it's interesting in politics, if I might digress for a minute right now, especially with what's going on in our presidential politics now, is that, early on it was the young Turks, the young Republican Turks in this case, who were, we're the young dudes and, you're all old. And then along came Trump, then along came Bernie, and suddenly it was, wait a minute, there's not just one person that's over the age of 60, there's several here. And so the conversation around someone being too old to be president versus being young and should be president dissipated. It disappeared. It went underground. And now we have people that are all over 60, or pretty close to it anyway, running as presidential election, comes to its completion. So it's important that we see that age really doesn't limit us. We have even more to bring to the table because we've been through life. But we also need the young people. I'm very, very much dedicated to, committed to the fact that agelessness is across generations. I mean, and it took me, while I was writing the book, The Ageless Way, which was targeted for people who were 40 and over, especially women 40 and over. And I began to realize and reflect, wait a minute, ageism starts when you're 20 and you're told you're too young. And it keeps going our entire life. And we started when, kids are talking about their birthdays, right? I'm 4.5, right?
Yes.
Or I'm 5.25, So what does that mean? Does that mean we can do more? And how does that rate to the kid that's 10? We just carry the self-inflicted ageism all through. And that has to be taken back. So when we talk about agelessness, it means that we drop all those limitations around being 18 or 20 or 90 or 100. Just drop it out. It has no bearing. I want us to celebrate our age, whether it's a youthful age or it's an elder age, but not to limit us, not to define who we are.
I'm with you. What I hate is when they have a birthday party for you and they get out the over-the-hill stuff.
Right, exactly.
I I don't relate to that. Okay.
Well, what that brings up for me when you say that is there was a study, and I can't remember exactly who did it now, but it was several years before the Great Recession. But 800 top executives, CEOs and heads of HR were asked, what is over what is over the hill? What age is that, right? And uniformly, it was age 30.
Whoa.
30. How absurd that is over. Now, today, it's 40, closer to 40. Maybe in another 10 years, over the hill will be 50. So as we keep living longer,
Yes.
that's going to move. But the point is, it's ridiculous, especially since 95% of all top leaders today are over the age of 30, that's for sure. And
That's for
probably
sure.
over 50, most of them, not all,
Yes.
obviously, but many of them. So we have to redefine all of this. It's all tangled up in an old story, which, by the way, I really should bring that out. That's what this book is about. It's illuminating the new story. It's saying, let's look at all the old stories that frame how we see age and how we experience age and create a new story. And that's what this is about. This is the time to do this. And my excitement, I guess I'm jumping, I hope I'm covering things
Don't
you want
worry
me
about
to.
it.
Yeah, okay. So my excitement for young people, and my excitement for all of us, actually, but especially for young people to realize, we talk about no work, no jobs, no opportunities, no careers for many, many young people. Oh my God. The aging space is wide open. And I think what happens, I can hear people like in my head going, no, I don't want to go that way, right? Please understand that I'm not talking about a bedpan mentality. And there's great needs for people that clean those bedpans, so I'm not diminishing that. I'm so appreciative of those roles. But in addition, anything you can do, whether it's in technology, innovation, anything you can create for people who are 40 and older, 50 and older, 60 and older, applies to everyone. So you can be creating all kinds of new technologies that we haven't even thought. Just think about artificial intelligence and robotics. I mean, there's so much that is potential. So young people, you can be a designer and you could be helping people serve or create product for this large demographic. We're talking about 106 million people in the US alone, who are over the age of 50. That's an enormous market.
It's huge.
So as I was writing the bigger book, my legacy book, The Ageless Way, I realized that I had to have a smaller book that would grab the attention of all these young people who are looking for new careers, but also boomers switching careers, and also business, wake up the business of aging. And so I wrote this book. And it's really, it came out of the bigger book.
Oh.
But it is focused on the longevity economy. And what is the longevity economy? The longevity economy is really a phrase, I actually have written down so I could say it right, and of course I didn't bring it in with me. But the longevity economy is everything to do with serving that demographic of the 50-plus market, even though you and I talk about 40-plus, but in that terminology it means the 50-plus market. So it's saying any activity, any spending, any product development, anything to do with that market is what makes up the longevity economy. And what I see as the biggest growth is in entrepreneurism. That is enormous. But what I was seeing was in every sector, and in both of these books, it's really, they're bridge books. I go through all the different sectors and show the impact. So this book is a must for anybody that wants to get a sense of what their future is going to be about, whether you're male or female, or you're serving this market, or you think you might check it out. This is the book to get. It has so much information on what is the longevity economy, what's going on, where do you fit in, And I especially speak to where women fit in, because the business of aging is going to be led by women. And it's going to be both as recipients, but also as the leaders and workers and entrepreneurs in that field. Wow. So anybody that's not looking at this is going to be left in the dust. You know, if you want your business, whether it's a large organization, a nonprofit, or a solo business, this is where it's at.
Well, it's a huge demographic.
Enormous.
And
Enormous.
The possibilities are endless. And with these young people today, with their creative minds and their knowledge of technology, I'm thinking specifically of my grandson. I was helping him with his homework, and I went, "What are you talking about here?" It's very interesting. Talking about, he's learning about coding, and he's, 14. But it's amazing.
Fabulous.
We're going to talk more about this. We need to take a little break.
Okay, good.
And then we'll be right back. And it's just hang in there. We're going to be right back. Get out your pen and your paper, okay? See you in a minute.
You always made sure I brushed my teeth.
You told me that smart was cool.
You always told me to dream big.
To all of those parents who took the time to make raising their children their most important job, we'd like to say,
thank you.
Thank you.
From the bottom of my heart, thanks, Mom and Dad.
This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
If you keep tanning, indoors or out, the effects of harmful rays will show up on your skin. Wrinkles, age spots, and an increased risk of melanoma, the second most common cancer in women 15 to 29. Stop tanning. Time may not be on your side. Learn how to protect your skin at spotskincancer.org. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
You'd do anything to take care of that spot on your lawn. So why not take care of that spot on your skin? If you're a man over 50, you're in the group most likely to develop skin cancer, including melanoma, the cancer that kills one person every hour. Check your skin for suspicious or changing spots. Go to spotskincancer.org to find out what to look for. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Oh, hey, bud. Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
With Gary and Todd?
Yeah?
I've been meaning to ask you, is there any drinking going on in this crowd?
No.
If any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't. I'd do anything to keep you safe.
Okay, I will.
I hope this is working.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you. For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Where it takes us, right? Yeah.
We're here with Karen Sands today, and we're talking about whether it's over 30, over 40. We're talking about longevity and how everything has changed. Like 40 is the new 50, or 50 is the new 60. Things are changing. We're living longer. And there are things that we need to think about. For instance, the world is changing, the economy is changing, the business world is changing, and we need to change. We need to continue to change and evolve, because every decade of your life, you're different than you were 10 years before. And you may want to go in a different direction. You may want to learn new things. We have been living a long time, and we're not done. Okay, this is
not even close.
Not even close. No. So we need to face the fact that we're going to transition. We're going to revitalize. We're going to reinvent ourselves, and we're not done. Okay, we're never done until the day. So let's get back with Karen Sands and talk about.
Well, I want to comment on a couple of things that you said.
Yes.
And forgive me because I'll disagree with you.
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
So the 50 being the new 40 and 60 being the new 50 is hogwash. Hogwash. I am 72 and proud of it.
Me too.
I am not 60 and I'm not 50, nor do I even want to be anymore. I am to really value being 72. The fact that I even got here is phenomenal, considering my mother's history, you know. But it's important that we don't devalue that 70 is 70 and 60 is 60 and 50 is 50. There are things I can't do now that I could do at 50. It just isn't. I can't do an all-nighter. I was talking to a colleague actually recently, and he's younger than I am. I'd say he's probably in his later 50s, mid to later 50s, and he was complaining. He had an article due, a deadline. We were comparing notes on articles we had to get done. And he was saying, I did an all-nighter. Oh my God, I was a mess for 3 days. I was roaring because I know I've done it and I know I can't do it anymore. So, I mean, that's a simple thing, but it's an example of there's a shift and there's owning that the loss, the shifts that are occurring, and then seeing what else new is coming. So don't try to be 50 if you're 60. Be 60 and cherish it. But what's different is that what's different for us is that the vistas are different. We have potentially more years ahead of us, and we bring so much more to the fore than we might have when we were younger. But the other piece too is that I think we are who we always have been. But what happens is we add more stories, we add more experiences as we age. So I'm still who I was when I was in my 20s and 30s in terms of what mattered to me, to my values, to my personality. I have more confidence in who I am, I mean. I'm more willing to stand in my own shoes and know what the potential dangers are than I might have in my 20s. But I was a hot shot, break the rules in my 20s just as much as I am now, you know? So it's both and. There's you know, elderhood, what I consider elderhood, becoming an elder, not being an old age person, but being an elder, and for women and men, that deep, deep part of us that we have hidden from for so long, that inner crone, or the inner sage, this is the time it comes more fully out, because we're coming into that space with it, into a synchronicity, an alignment with who we are inside and who we've always been, and all the parts of us that we couldn't do when we were 20. You know, what I do a lot in again, I'll hold it up if you don't mind. The Ageless way is I illuminate the old stories by looking at the myths, the fairy tales, the true life stories, mine and others, and ancient oracles, and see where was aging? How did we thread this through? How did we learn this? How do we see all of this? Because if we don't know what those stories are, we can't change them. You know, for a long time I talked about, I'm here to transform the conversation around aging. And really the conversation around aging sounds more like ageism to me versus not having ageism. But over time that changed for me, because it isn't just the conversation. That's sort of a, mental, gyrations, I won't use another word, but gyrations that spins things out and keeps it all up here, right? But when you get into the story, especially your story, like my mother's story and how it impacted my life, then you begin to get deeper and you can unravel what are those stories that are holding us back, that are limiting us, that are, defining aging and our own aging, where it's youth versus older, which is not true. That's hogwash also. So it's changing that. And the beauty of hearing these stories is that we can own them, because storytelling, especially for women, has always been how we learned and understood about our place in the world. So whether they're old stories or new stories, we need to know what they are. And then we need to claim them and embrace them. So the Ageless story is totally different than we've had ever before. And it's up to us to create it. But what's so beautiful is that, I'll speak to boomers now, and by the way, I'm a renegade on this too. I define boomers to be those that were born from 1943.
Okay.
Yes, from 1943 to 1967.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's different than a lot of demographers have used. And that's, again, because of my background and my statistical background and normative curves, things a lot of people won't know what I'm talking about, perhaps, and some will. But like when you're graded on the bell curve in school, that's a perfect example,
Yes.
right? You've got the, right? Well, it doesn't just start here and go suddenly up, right? It's a curve that goes like this. So people started moving into that boomer birth, right? That big bulge of births before demographers are calling it from this point to this point. No, it was slowly and gradually and then moves into that curve, right? So that's why I've widened it. And it may explain for a lot of people like me and like you, Marilyn, that, we probably always felt like, well, I think like boomers, I respond like boomers, my values are similar, I'm part of that, but I'm not one of those. Well, yes, we are. We were the very, 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 very leading edge of that generation. And so we're kind of on the cusp and can see both sides of that. And it's important to understand that nothing is black and white like that where it's cut off. It's gradual. So I got off my point here, but I wanted to explain that about boomers. Oh, yes, because boomers, all of us were affected by the Great Recession. If not personally, individually, it was somebody we knew or somebody we love, or both, or all of the above. But boomers especially, we were that generation of hope and promise and possibility and changing the paradigm and not trusting anybody over 30, even though everybody now that is in that grouping is over 30. But we really had this aspirational future, and nothing could stop us. And it's true, as a generation, we have changed things over and over again in our path from what they used to be. But the Great Recession slammed us to our knees, most of us to our knees. I'm not saying that didn't happen to millennials, of course it did, or to Gen Xers, if you want to compartmentalize generations. It hit all of us in some way. But boomers especially, we hit a tragedy that brought us to our knees, that we thought would never, ever happen to. How could it? We were boomers. We were changing the world, right?
Yeah.
And doing well. Whop, whop. Everything that we believed in, even today, when you look at politics and what's going on in presidential elections, Washington, whatever, it's all colliding, right? It's deconstructing, hopefully for good purposes. But so we were left with, what now? What really matters? Maybe it's not the fancy car and the big McMansion. Maybe it's not those things, right? Maybe we had to come down on our knees to find out what really matters. This is what Tolkien calls tragic reversal. And in Greek theater, it's also tragic reversal, where there's a switch that comes. And that's what the Great Recession was for us. It has switched things around so that we could, in fact, come out of that to what really matters, so that we look for meaning and significance. And that ties into the reinvention, because now we're reinventing and renewing based on values, not on how much we can get, but on our values, what really, really matters to us first and foremost, whether it's climate change and saving the Mother Earth, or whether it's the relationships we have. It's so much more prevalent and rich now after the Great Recession. And for boomers, it now brings us into a time then for us to be visionaries with wrinkles.
Absolutely.
We are the leaders we've been waiting for. But it's not us alone, and I think that's so much of what I've seen in the media, in the representation of generations, is that it's the young versus the old. And all these stereotypical divides and gaps that we've created, they're falsehoods. They're falsehoods. If we go based on values, which is what is predominating now, that brings all the generations together.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we need the younger people. I mean, my whole team are in their 20s, 30s, a couple in their 40s, but that's the bulk. I can't do what they do. I can't have the perspective they do.
Of course not.
Yeah. So it's a rich, rich time now for boomers to be the leaders, but to collaborate. I mean, if you think about it, the first Gen Xers have turned 50. So what we're talking about in the Ageless way is that it's all generations are going to be moving through these cycles together. So what we can do is to change it together.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry,
No, that's all right. I love this because being the same age, I'm listening to you and I'm relating totally.
Good.
And it's interesting when we do watch these younger people because we were there once. And some of what we're seeing, we remember, that was me, kind of thing. But I'm like you. I didn't follow rules exactly when I was young because if it didn't make sense, then, I say, well, no, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Because I had, even young, I had confidence in my opinion and my values. And it's true that the big recession did have to bring us to our knees. We needed that.
Absolutely.
Because we were trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Exactly.
We were just in it for the money.
Exactly.
Or we were in it for the fame. And we needed somebody to slap our face. And it was a big slap. Mm-hmm. And it did. It got our attention, most definitely. Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
But even with this conversation, I don't want to dismiss the reality that there is prevalent ageism in the workforce and in the marketplace. That it exists, which is why I so heartily believe in entrepreneurism. And I just forgot the name of the institute, but it doesn't matter. The predominant people now who are becoming entrepreneurs are between age 44 and 74. That's a humongous group.
Humongous.
Yeah,
it is.
So that's the shift that's happening. Although ageism is real, it's real. It's there. It's in our faces, and it's affecting women even more than men in terms of re-entry into the workforce or to rise above. But there are other opportunities, and that's why I'm so excited about the business of aging, right? The business side, because there's so much room for entrepreneurs, whether you're 20 or you're 100, it doesn't really matter. And it's just so exciting.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the book, hold it up again, would you please?
Which one?
The green.
The green one, yeah.
Yes,
this one.
because that
Forgive
is
my little notes
yes,
myself.
that is essential. As you're saying, there is a huge market out there.
Huge.
And you never.
And it's only going to grow bigger.
That's right. And you never know when you may decide, I can start a business. So many people do now. Mm-hmm. Every day there's more and more small businesses starting. Right. And we don't have to have token females, and we don't have to follow the corporate way anymore. Right. Even corporations are starting to change, but it's slow progress.
Well, that's another reason why I wrote The Gray is the New Green, is because I wanted to wake up corporate warriors who could pick up a little book versus the big book first. I mean, hopefully they'll go from here to here, but this book was, I can take it on a plane and I can read it. I can read it on the train. Yeah. Because right now, businesses are leaving, and I mean big corporate businesses, not just only the smaller companies, are leaving money on the table. They are not paying attention not only to the graying of America and the graying of the globe with our global corporations, but they're missing the boat in terms of women. Women boomers are the most incredible demographic, the most incredible opportunity to serve us, not sell us, but to serve us, because we are all about service. I'm not saying we're not bottom line, of course we are, but we're about serving. And so this book is also to wake up all the different sectors, whether it's business, whether it's marketing, whether it's technology, whether it's medicine. We have to break that old story and get to work. This is where the money's at.
And hopefully you wrote that down. okay? It's called
Gray is the New Green.
is the New Green. And you can go to Karen's website, and her books are on her website. And it's just, we could talk for another hour or
absolutely.
two. I know we could. And there were things we're going to talk about. Well, she'll just have to come back. Right?
You got it. I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. And,
for me too. Wonderful.
And I actually did an all-nighter recently.
You didn't.
And it wasn't that hard. And I felt young again.
How was
Woo-hoo!
it the next 2 or 3 days, though?
It wasn't too bad. I got kind of tired, and then, of course, I ended up getting sick. Okay, well, we won't talk about that now then, okay?
Is there anything else you wanted to ask me, though?
There was, but we're running out of time.
Okay,
So
you got it.
It's got to be in part 2, okay, of Karen Sands back with us. As you know, we do have sponsors. I do want to thank our sponsors. And I always finish with a quote. Now, there are many wonderful quotes out there in your books, on your website, but I've always had something about Eleanor Roosevelt and the way she thought. And I just loved when she said this: beautiful young people are accidents of nature, but beautiful old people are works of art. I just love that.
Me too. I
And
second
that's
that.
us. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great show. It was a very fast hour, and we're going to have Karen come back because we've got so
Love
much
it.
more to talk about. And her books are wonderful. I can't wait. I'm going to dive into this one tomorrow, okay? So I hope you enjoyed the show with me and with Karen. And be sure to come back at our next From This Corner TV show. Thank you.